Thanks for checking out my video. If you want to learn more from me, I have a lot of classes on Udemy. You can find the links to a lot of those in the description. Hey everybody. So if you see me looking over to the sides, because I got all my notes over here, but this is going to be the start of a series and then a bunch of supplemental videos on working with the divine feminine, on working with the energies of the goddess, and why it's important to honor and work with the divine feminine, especially given the way that the world is nowadays, where we've been dominated by patriarchal, masculine centered divinity for a very, very, very long time. And, the goddess has been written out of the majority of, the Abrahamic religions and stuff. It mentions Asherah in some of the Old Testament, but she was way more prominent back then. And if you go further back than that, you have the central veneration of goddesses like Inanna. And you can even step into Isis and other goddesses. And we're going to get into a bunch of different stuff over the course of this series, and I'm going to bring my lady on because she has a lot of perspective on this stuff. But mainly the even to the point where I'm definitely going to have her speak to the power that a god has is not only partnered with his consort, but also in a lot of circles, the god's power could not exist without that of the goddess. And even in wicked, wicked old times, you have those in power being masculine being granted that power, or as we would say in World History 1 and 2 from back when I was in high school, the divine mandate was given by the divine feminine. So is the goddess powerful? You bet. So let me just go through my notes here. I'm probably going to be adding stuff as I ramble. But why work with goddesses? So, you might think, well, why are so many seekers today turning to the goddess? I mean, you see so many different videos on working with goddess energy, working with the dark goddess, working with, there's tons of different goddesses that are talked about. Hecate, Lilith, even though she's not a goddess. Isis, Freya, the list can go on and on and on and on. So when we're walking a spiritual path, one of the biggest things out there is books. Books are mainly masculine based. They're all step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spiritual awakening. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 result. But one of the biggest things about magic is we're not trying to be in the logical masculine mind. We're trying to go into the deeper realms in our conscious, in our subconscious. We're trying to divine deeper truths around and about the world that is around us and what we can feel and what we can experience. And that kind of stuff is the feminine. The feminine is the deeper stuff. The feminine is the unconscious. The feminine is the feeling. The feminine is the emotions. The feminine is the body. So let's talk about balance of energies. Many traditions emphasize masculine divinity. You look at the Abrahamic religions, and even they talk about Shiva in Hinduism. Well, what about Shakti? Lots of other examples there. So the goddess is the forgotten half of the sacred. Let us create man in our image. And then I don't know the exact wording from Genesis, but when God was floating above the face of the waters, there was this guy. I'm trying to remember his name, but he wrote a dissertation proving that when God existed first, so did the divine feminine, because his face he floated above the face of the waters. That means him and the waters were there. Waters is emotion. Waters is the divine feminine. If you go way back when, you have Apsu and Tiamat. Guess who Tiamat was? Well, you have fresh water and salt water. Two forces existing at the very beginning of creation in that story. And you can go further back than that with Anshar and Kishar and Lamu and Lahamu, but that demonstrates that the divine masculine and divine feminine always coexisted. They were created at the same time, right? Then, let's see. Without the divine feminine, spirituality risks becoming rigid, head-centered, and disconnected from the body. Like I said, you know, if talk about the differences with masculine and feminine. The masculine is very logical, very to the point, very step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and the feminine is much more about feeling and emotion and intuition and stuff. So what does that tell you? Masculine is up here, feminine is here. The masculine is the higher, which doesn't make it better, and the feminine is the lower. And the goal in alchemy and a lot of other traditions and stuff is to unify the two. You have the balancing of the anima animus. You have the inner sacred marriage, the hieros gamos in yourself of the balance of the masculine and feminine energies. So if you're focused on just doing magic to get stuff done, that's masculine only. And if your focus on your spiritual path is just healing over and over and over and over, because people can always find something that they need to work on and they're in a healing trap, that's feminine only. We need to balance both of them. So, in terms of working with the divine feminine, the goddess heals through compassion, nurture, and embrace. A lot of times when we have a problem, we're like, what do I need to do to fix it? And then you can bring in the divine feminine with having compassion for yourself, with where you are, and helping you to have the feelings about working through that particular thing and accepting yourself. Think of the way that like a father would say, do this, A, B, C, D, and a mother would actually show you compassion. At least in my experience, my dad was just very logical, and, my mom provided more of the comfort. Let me know if you can relate to that kind of thing. So, people carry wounds from patriarchal systems, religious shame, or rejection of the feminine. Think of how many people end up turning to magic and spirituality and deeper paths and things like that, and they have the monotheistic Abrahamic Christian guilt, and it's very, very hard for them to break away from these different things. You're stepping into witchcraft, paganism, and whatnot, and you might still have the, am I doing something wrong that's gonna send me to hell for forever? Even though hell isn't a real place, you can debunk the hell out of it, because Gehenna, mentioned in the Bible, was the town dump. And let me know if you want me to make a huge breakdown on that. Maybe I already did. I don't think I did, but I've been meaning to. So think of the way that the masculine system out there in the majority of religions says, if you don't follow these rigid rules, you're going to be doomed for eternity. That's masculine based. Do as I say or else, right? Even the very first experience that I had when it came to stepping into magic was a ritual with just a candle in a dorm room and invoking and asking for the blessing of the divine feminine. It's still to this day one of the most profound experiences that I ever had. And then next point, working with goddesses provides a safe container to mend those fractures. So you go from this rigid system that is trying to keep us in line spiritually and mundanely, look at the way that the world is now, but we're talking spiritually here, where ask for forgiveness because you're a sinner and you're a terrible person and the only one that can save you is such and such, and or follow these strict rules and then you will have eternity in paradise and blah, 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 masculine and rigid. But having compassion for yourself, that you are not a screw up, you're not a sinner, you're human, and you want to do better. The divine feminine provides that. Then, awakening the inner world is my next point. So the goddess speaks in dreams, symbols, and synchronicities. The masculine is more rigid and stuff, result-based, and more external, because the masculine takes what the feminine provides and gives form to it. So the feminine is more the inspiration, intuition, and whatnot. Even making this channel was a feminine inspiration. My girlfriend got me to start making this channel way back when, because I had a lot to say. And I kept talking to her about it, and she's like, you should probably go on YouTube. Well, here I am. Thanks, hon. And, so the divine feminine awakens imagination and intuition, which are key to powerful magic. I talk about in Magical Mastery, my book, which you can find down there in the description in the link tree, that emotions and your imagination are key points of magic. Working with the divine feminine can help you with your imagination, not only because energy follows intention, and intention is created by imagination and also your intuition to move energy around, not only when you are casting your circle or doing your spell work, but gaining these extra senses. Like intuition is a very feminine sense, because the masculine senses is, seeing, touching, tasting, hearing, smelling. But those deeper ones that the Karo tradition talks a lot about, which is one of the biggest highlights for me when I did my Nusta Carpi, was the fact that I felt the energy change around me. And it wasn't just I felt something physically. You feel it inside you somewhere. It's an extrasensory kind of thing. Developing a relationship with the divine feminine will help you to build those extra sensory perceptions. And next point, connecting with her makes your rituals richer, more alive, and more visionary. You can have a very rigid ritual of take that book, gather these materials, read these certain things, boom, boom, your results. When you start to add your own personal touch to it, that's divine feminine. When you add more colors and make it spicier, the way that, like, my house was pretty mundane when 12 years ago my girlfriend moved into it and she spiced things up. Would I have decorated with stuff like this? No. That's the feminine for you, right? And the more alive and richer that you make your rituals through the inspiration of the divine feminine and that creativity, because creativity in itself is feminine, then that's deeper psychodrama, deeper rituals, more effective rituals also. Next point, reconnecting with the cycles. Okay, gods are often linked with order and permanence, right? Goddesses remind us of cycles. Everything lives and dies. Everything is born, grows, matures, withers, dies. As a man, I have to say that I'm working on connecting more with, the different cycles around me. So not only the cycles of the planets with astrology, so keep that in mind, but also the way that the moon is, because these energies and stuff, you ever hear about why, people are called lunatics, because, attributed with like the full moon. Why is it that ERs are always craziest at full moons? These things around us, from the planets and whatnot, from astrology and more closely the moon, they have an energetic effect on us, and understanding those cycles and tapping into those cycles, depending on if whether you're masculine or feminine or not, or either, or in between, whatever, that gets you more in touch with the divine feminine. So in as far as masculine stuff goes, that's the sun. That's I get up, I go to work, I do my stuff, I come home, I watch TV, I go to bed, right? But there's bigger cycles than that. So the divine feminine, which is the moon, is much bigger, much more subtle, but it's there. So start journaling around the moon. What happens to you in your life, in your emotions, feelings, actions, everyday life, when the moon is waxing, when it's full, when it's waning, when it's new. So then, empowerment through embodiment. So the goddess calls us into the body, not away from it. You can't always, and this is a hard thing for me, you can't always think your way out of a problem. You can't always think your way out of trauma. You can't always think your way out of emotions. You have to sit there and be with it. And invoking the divine feminine, a goddess of your choice, if you want to work with so-and-so, you want to name it, you want to put her in a box, go ahead, but she's much bigger than that. So calling the divine feminine, or the goddess, or what have you, whatever fits your fancy, start where it fits your fancy, and you can grow from there. And sitting and feeling the different things that you're feeling and experiencing. She helps to dissolve shame, reclaim sensuality, and find sacredness in physical life. When you go out into nature, you're experiencing life. Life is the culmination of the divine masculine and the divine feminine, but it's got more of a feminine slant, because you see that cycle of birth, flourishing, waning, and dying. And then, next point, the forgotten doorway. By working with goddesses, you awake a current that the patriarchal spirituality has buried. We don't just want magic to be hammer needs nail. Magic is much deeper than that. Magic, way back in the day, was not just about people going to somebody because they had a problem. Magic was seeing that the world is full of these energies around us and these different beings around us and these spirits around us that we can work with, that we can learn from, that we can benefit from. So you go out in nature and you're experiencing spirits there that are talking to you and things like that. Consider them to be children of the goddess. Consider yourself to be a child of the goddess, because we have, in a lot of different spiritual traditions, right? We have our earthly parents and then we have our spiritual parents. So you have a mother and a father. You have a divine mother and a divine father. And the point is to connect with all of them, because we are both physical and spiritual. Therefore, our parentage is also both physical and spiritual. Let me know if I'm making sense down in the comments, by the way. So, in the next episode, we'll explore one of her greatest gifts, healing. Because before the goddess empowers you, she embraces you and restores you. So, basically, if you've ever felt the presence of the divine feminine, how did that show up for you? That's my question for you to drop down in the comments. If you haven't, what would you like to experience? Use this question as a way of setting intention of, if you want to work with the divine feminine, with what and about what. All right, I will catch you guys next time. Good hunting.